I think, we live in this world that's somewhat over therapized and over diagnosing mental, disorders. Maybe it's ironic I'm saying that with Yay in my poster here. Like, listen, I do think there is a place for therapy and, medication for mental disorders, definitely. But generally, I think those are kind of extreme cases. And I feel like there is almost this therapy psyop with how BetterHelp was really shoved down throats. And we found out, sort of shady business practices that they have. And, just in general, how capitalism, I know, hey, people are going to be like, oh, he said the buzzword. But seriously, capitalism, it works to sort of have something that's broken and sell you the antidote. A well-known example is Bill Gates would have computers with the viruses in you, but he would also sell you the antivirus protection. I think there is a little bit of that with how we recognize maybe not mental health, but mental disorders and therapy and that sort of thing. I felt like it was really around 2017, which is when this was getting really pushed heavily. I was in high school. I remember 13 Reasons Why was really popular. And then all this music started coming out about sort of like suicide and that sort of thing. That's when the Logic Suicide Hotline song came out. And, I like Logic and all these things. I think he meant well, but it just came to reinforce. I think there is like this confirmation bias that it's like if everyone is, bringing up about mental illness and not feeling well, then maybe you'll be like, yeah, I'm broken too. And I'm not trying to say that, everyone is faking it, but I think if you convince, like, if you're constantly hearing about, people being broken, feeling broken, then maybe that can rub off on you in a way. I don't want to say that people are faking it. I don't want to be insensitive towards anyone's struggles because I've definitely struggled with that. But I do worry about, how pushed this can be in a lot of ways. And it just feels awkward that, people can make money off of, fixing people who may or may not have mental illnesses. It just feels wrong. It just feels off. And that's what I want to express. I feel there's just so many people in therapy now, and I've done it before. I think it's helpful in some ways. Like you get a lot of things off your chest, but I felt like after the first couple sessions, I just had nothing really important to say. Like those first couple sessions were really, fulfilling and rewarding to me. But after that, I just felt like there wasn't a reason for me to keep going back. And, it's hard for me not to look at the profit incentive structure. Like you are incentivized to keep coming back. And you won't keep coming back unless there's something wrong with you. And it's like, well, how do you get better if you understand that the money is made by you staying not well or believing that you're not well. And there's no shame in going. I'm not trying to do like this alpha male men don't go. Like I'm not trying to do that stuff, but I feel a little bit skeptical whenever something feels really pushed on people, just how, you know, and I think there is an importance to therapy, like if you're going through grief or loss or that sort of thing. That's why I went when I went the first time. But when I went the second time, I was kind of like, I don't know what this is for. Like, literally, the reasons why I don't feel well is because of, I wasn't happy at my job and I wasn't happy with the relationship I was in and I wasn't happy with, what was going on with classes. So what I did was I fixed those issues instead of just repeatedly going to therapy. Um, yeah, and I felt better. It wasn't fully cured. No one's ever fully cured, but I felt much better, like, in the next months that followed that just by doing that. And yeah, I remember, I feel like it can be really forced on you. And I think what it goes back to is this sort of idea between the mind and the heart. I think in life, there are thinkers and there are feelers. And the world generally is kind of run by thinkers because they're better at structuring stuff. They're better at organization and those sort of daily tasks. But, feelers, I consider myself more of a feeler, like just kind of going, I don't want to say going with the flow, but things have to feel right to me in whatever context. I can't feel forced. And what happens a lot of times is, the structure of a thinker society, which I think we lived in, is they try to force feelers to be thinkers, which makes them feel mentally ill, which is what happened with me. Like, I'll be honest, I've looked up, the traits of OCD. I think I have a lot of the traits. If I went to a psychiatrist, they would probably tell me I have OCD. But that's when I was, constantly just thinking and over analyzing anything. And, my thoughts felt dark and they felt wrong and they felt terrible, right? But once I just started feeling things, I just started to feel like, those thoughts, they don't represent me. It's just me getting myself into this, wrong loop. And what makes me, feel better, what makes me feel good is just connecting with others, doing art, that sort of thing. Like just doing activities where I'm not like constantly thinking and having to use my mind. Doing things that take my mind off myself and my anxieties and my worries and that sort of thing. And that's sort of what I wanted to get at. I feel like if you're an artist, if you're an artistic person, like I consider myself to be, you're going to be more of a feeler, and those thinker sort of bubbles, they just won't resonate with you. You'll just constantly feel mentally ill and, not okay if you're forcing yourself to be like this logical, organized, neat person who analyzes everything. It's just, if you're like me or if you understand what I'm getting at, you gotta just feel it out. You gotta do what feels right for you. I don't know if just sitting around and talking to people about thoughts will make me feel better than just doing the activities I love. And I understand not everyone has access to that. I'm not trying to speak for everyone, but I'm just speaking for myself. And I kind of feel like the way therapy and getting medicated has been forced on it. It just makes me want to pull back away. It just feels sort of psyopy to me. You know, I used to be with a girl, and therapy worked for her and good for her. And she would constantly tell me like, "You'd be better if you were in therapy. You should go see someone. You should talk to something." But it's like I just don't think that's for me, and I don't think it's for everyone. And in a weird way, people used to be shamed for going to therapy, but now I feel like you're kind of shamed for not going to therapy, which is sort of a funny, 180 flip. But those are just my thoughts. You can agree, you could disagree. If you go to therapy, I hope it works for you. I hope it's great. I'm not trying to say, you shouldn't go universally, but it just feels like it's not for me.